That's gotta have hurt.
Detective Burlow looked up at his partner, then back at the lifeless body in the middle of the bedroom. After 20 years in service, he still couldn't handle scenes like this, and his partner's jokes flew over his head almost immediately. Clemens always seemed to be able to make light of any situation, and it bothered him sometimes. They had received the call only 15 minutes earlier. Tiffany Cross, the house's realtor, had made the 911 call, screaming into the phone, claiming that the previous owner was killing people in the property. They had responded immediately and were more than surprised when they broke down the door and stormed the house.
Philip Nottler.
Clemens cut through his thoughts.
No history of violence or whatever the hell you want to call this. Even talked to a few neighbors. Lost his house months ago.
Next of kin?
Burlow got up and removed the gloves from his hands.
Parents up in Vermont.
Who's going to tell them?
I already did. They'll be here tomorrow to claim the body.
Burlow nodded and looked around the room one last time before he exited. He made his way downstairs and out of the house, greeted by a mob of neighbors who had responded to the gunshots. Suicide, especially in this neighborhood, always seemed to gather a crowd. He looked at the vultures with disgust, knowing for a fact that they'd be talking about this at their club meetings and on the golf courses the next day. Clemens caught up with him, putting his notebook away.
His parents said that he'd been having problems. Got fired, lost the house, and broke up with a lady friend.
Did anyone get a statement from the witness?
We're picking her up now. She's only a block away. We sent a dispatch to pick up the ex as well. When we contacted her, she said Nottler had visited a few days ago, and she had to chase him out with a hammer when he wouldn't leave. Could you believe that?
After what I just saw in there, I'd believe anything, really.
I don't get it, though. I mean, what would make a man break into his old house, drag in a bunch of mannequins, tie them up, and go to town on them that way?
Burlow shook his head. They had found 2 mannequins in the garage, one with a knife in its back, and the other tied to a chair, head smashed in and plastic everywhere. The other 2 had bullet holes in them and were lying next to the dead body. It was the strangest thing he'd ever seen, and he just couldn't wrap his head around it.
The same thing that made him jam a gun into his mouth and pull the trigger, I guess.
Burlow said, sticking a cigarette in his mouth and looking for his lighter. Clemens saved him the trouble.
Come on, let's get the paperwork done and head home. It's going to take me a while to fall asleep anyway.
Clemens smiled and slapped his partner on the back. Burlow stole a look at the body bag being rolled out of the house, shook his head, and turned away. After 20 years, some things never failed to surprise him. He led his partner to their car, started the engine, and drove off. This has been This Is Gonna Hurt by A.I. Nasser, narrated by Tom Bowers. Copyright 2016 by A.I. Nasser. Production copyright 2016 by ScareStreet.com.